Speaking of another layered and partisan-coded and complicated investigation, Hunter Biden back in the news. Chuck Grassley, one of the leading kind of oversight Senate Republicans or Republicans from either party, was saying that a whistleblower has turned over copious amounts of evidence of criminal wrongdoing on the part of Hunter Biden. Hunter Biden has been under criminal investigation for, it feels like years now at this point. A lot of people wondering what on earth is going on with that? Are we going to get some type of resolution? Why are we not getting the kind of drip, drip, drip leaks that you get sometimes with these political, with these investigations of people who are in politics? I don't know. Like, when are we getting an answer here?
Yeah, this is one thing, and it says Hunter. If you're watching, you see it says Hunter at the bottom of the screen. But if you read Grassley's, he put out a press release yesterday in which he did say, as the tweet we had up from Jerry Dunleavy of the Washington Examiner, that whistleblowers have revealed the FBI possesses, quote, significant, impactful, and voluminous evidence with respect to potential criminal conduct by Hunter Biden related to China, and that includes info provided by Tony Bobulinski and to Ukraine, which tied to Burisma. But if you read Grassley's press release, what he's really talking about is the fact that the FBI may be sitting on tons of evidence that implicates the president himself. And the Hunter Biden story is extremely relevant and concerning in a million different ways. Whether you're talking about CEFC, whether you're talking about Burisma, it's pretty much obvious the level of corruption. He's trading on his name. He's making tons of money off of these, off of trading on his name and operating, let's say, with something like CEFC. That's the Chinese energy conglomerate that he made a lot of money off of, and at a time when you wouldn't necessarily have wanted the son of the vice president or the son of the former vice president to be involved with a Chinese company, let alone a Chinese energy conglomerate on the level that CEFC was. But the idea that the FBI, according to a senior Republican senator, has voluminous evidence that might actually tie Hunter Biden to his father, that his father was profiting, that is the critical thing here. And you have people saying, whistleblowers saying, that the FBI has evidence they provided of this to this extent. We're getting into pretty remarkable territory. And a good question for you is, do you have historical precedent? Is there historical precedent? Has this happened before, basically?
You mean for
the FBI sitting on evidence that might implicate, major evidence that might implicate the president in sort of like criminal corruption? Oh,
yes. I think, and actually there's a new Hoover biography that just came out, or it's coming out soon. I have a copy of it that I've started, which is a reminder that Hoover sat on evidence around high-level misdeeds for pretty much every president.
I was going to say.
Yes.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it would not be unprecedented for that to happen.
But it is getting to this era that we consider culturally to be a very dark one. And that's why I assumed that there was some sort of Hoover precedent for this. And we look back on Hoover's tenure over the FBI, even though the building is named after him, our culture sort of understands, has in the last couple of decades at least, come to understand the tenure of J. Edgar Hoover as a very dark one, as a very sort of un-American approach to, I mean, the FBI, you could argue, in general, is sort of predicated on problematic grounds, but that tenure is a very dark one, and this seems to be happening under everybody's noses.
One question might be, what would the criminal activity be? Because if you ever do corner Democrats on this particular question, they'll say, well, Joe Biden was out of office at that point. Like, he was no longer vice president. Now, he was vice president when Hunter was cutting some of these deals. But during the time that, let's say, since Bobulinski is the one that is being referenced here by Grassley, the Bobulinski claims, if you believe them, and I think he has presented a significant amount of evidence to suggest you should believe him.
Right.
That is definitely kind of pre him running for president and post vice president. But if you missed this, but basically Bobulinski has texts and emails with Hunter Biden talking about meeting your father.
Right.
And then there are text messages that say, hey, I'm at the bar, I'm over here, and hey, and it's like, hey, it was awesome to meet your dad. There are contemporaneous text messages that would have had to have been concocted like seamlessly, like if you were trying to like retcon this event that didn't happen. So the FBI should be able to then figure out, well, where was Joe Biden at this time?
Right.
Now, if he did meet with Bob Alinsky, it would be understandable that Hunter would want that to happen, like that, because Hunter's whole pitch is my last name is Biden. It's only useful if your last name is Biden if you can also then deliver on those connections. And so to be able to have your father come and meet this guy at the hotel bar or wherever they said they met. There was another one where we'll stick with Bob Alinsky. That now they wouldn't talk about anything because that's not how that goes. Like Biden would show up, and this is what Bob Alinsky says.
There are plenty of pictures of Joe Biden with Hunter Biden's clients.
Right, and this one there was no picture, but according to Bob Alinsky, it was just like, hey, take good care of my son. And my son says that he trusts you, therefore I trust you. And they don't talk business. They don't talk. The other problem for Biden, the big guy, as he likes to go by, is that he has said on the record that I've never discussed Hunter's business affairs with him ever. Hunter has said on the record to the New Yorker that they did at least once, where Biden said to him, with Burisma, I hope you know what you're doing. You better know what you're doing. Which you could see somebody saying that if your son is Hunter, like, geez, Hunter, you better know what you're doing here. And that doesn't necessarily implicate Biden in the business deal, but it means they did talk about,
which is a lie,
the business deal, which means his claim that they never talked about it is at least discredited by that moment. And then it puts the Bob Alinsky meeting in a different perspective. So I'm very curious what information the FBI has gathered to kind of, because if Bob Alinsky is able to, if he provided all of the same information that he's made public, then the FBI has tools to try to verify, was he where he said he was Hunter where he said he was. Be nice if we would learn some of this.
Well, and again,
it'd be nice for Democrats if they'd learn it before the presidential election.
Because yes, if the House flips to Republicans, their focus on oversight is absolutely going to drag a lot of this into the public domain. I mean, it's going to be a huge tug of war on information pertaining to Joe and Hunter Biden. So there's no question about that. And the question of criminality is a good one. The question of propriety is a good one. I think the bottom line, from my perspective, is that I would love to know how the President of the United States funded his lifestyle from the years that he was after leaving the Obama administration until being elected, because it seems very likely to me that a chunk of that was funded on Hunter sort of trading on the Biden name and paying for different things, and what that means for Joe Biden's actual governance. Maybe that's the last question I'll toss to you. I'm curious what you think. Is there any reason to believe that Joe Biden's, say, foreign policy is compromised when it comes to China, compromised when it comes to Ukraine? I think it's an open question. I don't know that there's significant evidence he's treating the China question from this very broad 30,000-foot position differently because of those relationships and because of the way that his son made money. But it does show, I think, at the very least, corruption.
Well, we know a significant amount of his revenue did come from what I'd call legal corruption. The typical legal corruption that we have in our system, which is just massive book deals that come from these corporate conglomerates that own these book companies. So there was that.
Which he routed through an S corp, right?
Routed through an S corp. Yeah. Then there was a $800,000 or $900,000 gig at the University of Pennsylvania, where mostly it seems like a no-show gig, which he then followed by naming the University of Pennsylvania chancellor or president or whatever it was as like the ambassador to Germany. And so a reporter had flagged it as one of the few, because ambassadorships are just, under every president, just rotten to the core. Yeah. They just go to big donors.
Right.
And it's the one place where that's a little less awful, because you want an ambassador to be or if you're an empire, you want an ambassador to be a representative of that empire and having some type of super rich person who's a social being.
Yeah.
It's like they'll do the empire's work. And then they're like, this is one of the few. We got somebody that runs a university. So thank you, Biden, for doing something that wasn't like on its face corrupt when it came to ambassadorships. And it's like, oh, actually, that person, she paid him $900,000 personally, directly to him. So it's like, all right, never mind. That one was not corrupt either. So we already know that, and there wasn't a lot of time. 2017, 18, and then by like 18, he's back in the race.
Yeah, yes, he is.
So.
You know, the reason that I think these stories between Bannon and Danchenko and Hunter Biden, I think it's very true that the media, obviously with all of the bias and activism at play, also refrains from going super deep on them because they're just difficult to dive into. It's difficult to give appropriate treatment to them in shorter segments.
But to answer your question,
yeah.
I don't think that his Ukraine policy is influenced at all by it. Because I think this is structural. Like this is what any kind of MAGA president would be doing.
Although
like, Democrat or Republican.
I do think there's a question as to whether when he was vice president and Hunter Biden was on the Burisma board that he had people chirping in his ear from his son's sort of orbit and had that sort of disproportionately loud volume up on them as opposed to other
That's
people.
why this stuff shouldn't happen.
Exactly, because you can't quantify it, you can't know it, you can't disentangle it. But the reason I think these stories are important to cover is because it does, from my perspective, really show the way in which powerful interests are being weaponized, not just by Republicans, not just by Democrats, but by the political establishment sort of in general. I mean, if you look at the House January 6th committee that subpoenaed Steve Bannon, you have Adam Kinzinger and you have Liz Cheney leading the charge, shattering congressional precedent in terms of what we seek on select committees like that. And the result is probably, sadly, going to be something like more unrest along the lines of what happened on January 6th, along the lines of what's happened around the country in different ways over the course of the last few years, because this stuff is really happening. I mean, it is really happening under our noses. The media's lack of curiosity, whether it is Bannon, Danchenko, Hunter Biden, is truly, I think, sorry state.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.